Okay, picture this. Imagine walking into an industry that is absolutely dominated by massive governments and billion-dollar defense contractors and telling them with a completely straight face that they are doing everything totally wrong. For decades, the conventional wisdom in the aerospace industry was that rockets were inherently undeniably expensive. Why? Well, just because they had always been expensive. It was an accepted fact of life, kind of like gravity. But Elon Musk didn't accept that. Instead of looking at how rockets had been built in the past by all these legacy contractors, he completely refused to accept that artificial constraint. He looked at the problem through a totally different lens, which is the exact cognitive framework we're going to decode in today's explainer.
Musk asked a really simple but incredibly disruptive question. Instead of looking at past rockets, he asked what they're actually made of at a chemical and material level, and what the fundamental physical laws governing them really are. That single, massive shift in perspective, it led directly to reusable rockets. It slashed the cost of space travel and completely upended an entire industry. So how did he actually do it? He used a cognitive hack known as first principles thinking. Today, we're going to explore why your brain's default operating system is probably keeping you trapped in bad arguments, how manipulators use the illusion of complexity to hide their weak logic, and exactly how you can use this first principles framework to build bulletproof arguments.
So, Part 1. The problem. Reasoning by analogy.
To really appreciate the power of first principles, we first have to look at how almost every single human being naturally processes a new argument or a new challenge. We default to a very specific, very limiting mental operating system, reasoning by analogy. When you encounter a new situation, your brain instantly asks, hey, what does this remind me of? You look at how other people have argued this point, or you look at solutions that have worked in the past. It's essentially like trying to navigate a brand new maze using a crumpled up old map from a totally different city. Sure, it feels efficient, but it keeps you entirely trapped within the boundaries of existing solutions. When you reason by analogy, you inherit invisible boundaries and artificial constraints without even realizing it. You assume that the way things have been done is the way things must be done. Contrast that with first principles thinking, where you literally break the maze down into its fundamental building blocks and draw your own map.
Let me ask you a painfully honest question. Have you ever been in a debate, presented a perfectly logical point, only for your opponent to just wave their hand and dismiss you with, well, that's just how the real world works, and, frustratingly, you kind of just nodded along and accepted it? Listen, if you bring reasoning by analogy into a debate, you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back. You're automatically accepting your opponent's arbitrary rules and historical precedents before you even open your mouth. You're letting their conventional wisdom bully you into giving up. But why do we actually do this?
That brings us to Part 2, the agitation, brain biology, and the complexity illusion.
There's actually a deep biological reason why our brains naturally take these detrimental logical shortcuts. Your brain isn't trying to self-sabotage. It's honestly just trying to survive. Think about the sheer biological cost of thinking. Your brain makes up only about 2% of your total body weight, yet it consumes a staggering 20% of your body's total energy. Because of this massive energy drain, your brain is designed to be inherently lazy. To conserve power, it constantly creates mental shortcuts and automatic patterns that require minimal conscious effort. Thinking hard literally burns calories, so your brain just says, let's just use an analogy, it's way cheaper. And here's the kicker. Manipulative debaters know exactly how your lazy brain works, and they will weaponize it against you using a very specific fallacy. It's called the appeal to complexity. Instead of providing clear reasons or solid evidence, your opponent will present the issue as so overwhelmingly difficult, so incredibly nuanced and complicated that you just stop asking questions. They use complexity as a shield to avoid giving you a straight answer, basically forcing your energy-saving brain to wave a white flag and abandon the argument entirely. They give your brain an excuse to take a nap.
But here's the secret that systems theorists know. Complexity is very often a total illusion. It's an illusion created by interconnection rather than inherent difficulty. Complex problems are usually just multiple, really simple problems interacting with each other. When you try to attack the entire complex mass all at once using your lazy analogical thinking, you experience total paralysis. You look at the massive rocket and say, it's too expensive, it's too complex, we can't change it. We have to stop letting fake complexity shut down our logic.
Which leads us to Part 3, the solution, the atomic deconstruction framework.
So, how do we fix this? How do we cut through the noise, shatter the illusion of fake complexity, and hack the debate like a tech visionary? We abandon analogies entirely. We use the atomic deconstruction framework. This is your absolute ultimate weapon. First principles thinking means breaking a complex problem down into its most fundamental components and reasoning your way up from there. It requires a precise three-step framework to completely dismantle any complex debate from the ground up. Step 1, interrogate constraints. Step 2,
decompose assertions, and step 3, rebuild logic. Let's break these down. Step 1 is to interrogate the constraints. First principles thinking requires you to question absolutely everything. For every constraint or requirement your opponent throws at you, you must ask a vital question. Is this a fundamental law of nature, or is it just an arbitrary human convention? The crucial takeaway here is that most constraints are just conventions. People do things simply because that's how they've always been done, just like the defense contractors building those single-use rockets. If it doesn't violate the laws of physics, it's just a habit, and habits can be broken.
Step 2 is to decompose the assertions. When an opponent makes a massive, complex claim, you have to separate their assertions from actual verification. An assertion relies purely on declaration. Literally anyone can just declare something to be true. But verification? That relies on independent evidence and checking. You have to break their argument down into its absolute atomic parts. Strip away all the fluffy rhetoric, all the emotional language, and demand verification until you're left with only the stone-cold, undeniable facts.
Finally, step 3, rebuild the logic. Once you've stripped away the arbitrary conventions and the unverified assertions, you are left with your fundamental components. Now, you reconstruct the argument from the ground up based on basic truths, not previous assumptions. You're no longer copying what others have done or playing by your opponent's rules. By doing this, you'll often find solutions that completely violate conventional assumptions, allowing you to outmaneuver your opponent entirely.
And that brings us to part 4, the resolution, conceptual independence.
When you stop fighting against fake complexity and start constructing bulletproof arguments from the absolute foundation of truth, you achieve something incredibly powerful: conceptual independence. But make no mistake, achieving this requires profound intellectual courage. When you strip an argument down to its raw facts and propose a solution that violates conventional wisdom, you're going to face fierce resistance. People genuinely hate having their familiar analogies and their comfortable worldviews destroyed by raw facts. You'll be told you're being unreasonable or that you just don't understand how the real world works. But a genuine master of debate doesn't let invisible boundaries dictate their logic. You are no longer limited by other people's assumptions about what is possible.
So here's the big takeaway. The next time someone tries to bully you with conventional wisdom or shield their weak argument with an appeal to complexity, I want you to look them dead in the eye and ask this devastating question. Is that a fundamental truth, or is that just how you're used to doing it? Seriously, watch their entire worldview buffer like a broken computer. Use what we covered in this explainer to upgrade your mental operating system, abandon those lazy analogies, and always, always build your arguments from the ground up.